Good morning, children. In our last period, I had sent a video about the lesson The Happy Prince. In that video, you must have seen about a bird that is swallow, very a small bird. Other character in this story is a prince, and you can see he is happy prince. You can see the statue of happy prince in this picture. You can see the swallow also. Two characters are main characters in this story. These lines are very important. The happy prince was a beautiful statue. He was covered with gold. He had sapphires for eyes and a ruby in his sword. Why did he want to part with all the gold that he had and his precious stones? Dear children, you know sapphire, ruby are called precious stones, very costly. In your previous video, you have already seen the picture of sapphire and ruby. I think you know about them. So the writer says there was sapphire for his eyes and ruby in his sword. Now your story starts. There stood the statue of the happy prince on a tall column in the city. Tall column is a high place and the statue was there. He was gilded all over. Gilded means covered with gold. The statue was covered with gold. That is called gilded. He had thin lips of fine gold. He had two bright sapphires for eyes. Okay, there were sapphires, gems stone, precious stone for his eyes. A large ruby glowed on his sword. हिल्ट जो तलवार पकड़ने की मूठ होती है, that is called hilt. A little swallow came and sat on the statue. Swallow, I have already told you, a very small bird. And the bird came and sat on the statue. He decided to spend the night on it. But as he was going to sleep, a large drop of water fell on him. The swallow was amazed There was no cloud, yet it rained. The second drop of water made the swallow decide to fly out. The third drop of water made him to look at the statue. It was weeping, very surprising. The statue was weeping, and it was not drop of water, but they were tears. Yes. The statue spoke to the swallow. The story goes in this way. The statue spoke to the swallow. It said that when it was alive, it had not known what tears were. The statue told to him, when I was alive, I did not know what tears are. His courtiers called him a happy prince. Now, he sat very high. He saw the miseries of the city. That is why he is weeping. The happy prince told the swallow that there lived a woman far away. She was a seamstress. सीमस्ट्रेस इज दर्जिन, जो दर्जी का काम करता है, वो दर्जिन थी. शी वॉज एम्ब्रॉयडरिंग फ्लावर्स ऑन द satin gown of the queen's maid of honor. The maid was to wear it at the next court ball. Ball is a kind of dance, and the maid wanted to wear that gown. In the bed there lay ill her little boy. He was suffering from fever. The happy prince asked the swallow to pick up the ruby from his sword hilt. He should give that to the woman. This was the request of the statue of the happy prince to swallow. Take the ruby from his sword's hilt and give it to the woman. First the swallow said that his friends had gone to Egypt. He was waited for in Egypt. Means swallow was waited, means his friends were waiting the swallow, he told to the happy prince. But the happy prince requested him to stay on one night. The swallow agreed. He picked up the ruby and flew to the woman's house. He put the ruby near the woman's thimble. He also fanned the boy's forehead. The boy felt a bit better. He sank into a deep slumberish sleep. The swallow is asked again to help a playwright. This was the second request of the happy prince, because the playwright was also in trouble. See the lesson. The swallow flew back to the happy prince. He felt warmer, though it was cold. The happy prince told him that it was because he had done a good act. The swallow wanted to fly to Egypt, but the happy prince told him to stay there one more night. He told the swallow that he saw a playwright in a little room. He was trying to finish a play for the director of the theater, but he was too cold to write. He was hungry also. He asked the swallow to pluck one sapphire from his eye and give that to the playwright. The swallow returns to the happy prince. The playwright saw the sapphire. He was happy. Now he hoped to finish the play. The swallow went to the happy prince. He told him that he had come to bid him goodbye, but the happy prince asked him to stay one more night. Dear children, you can see now, first the swallow and the happy prince help to the seamstress. First, second person was helped by them was the playwright. Now you see the story. The happy prince told the swallow that there was a little match girl. You know, match, diya salai, match girl who sold match. Now see, the happy prince told the swallow that there was a little match girl in the square below. All her matches had fallen in the gutter. Her father would beat her if she did not bring home some money. She was crying. He asked the swallow to pluck out the sapphire from his other eye and give that to her. The swallow flew with the sapphire. He put the sapphire into the little girl's hand. The magic girl was the third person who was helped by the prince, happy prince, and the swallow. The swallow flew back to the happy prince. He told the prince that he would stay with him as he had gone blind. The happy prince asked him to fly over the city and tell him what he saw. He also told the swallow that the most marvelous thing was human suffering, and human misery was the greatest misery. The swallow flew over the city. He saw hungry children. He also saw many poor people. The happy prince asked him to take leaf after leaf of the fine gold over his body and give to them. The poor now laughed and the children played. Then there came the snow and then frost. Everything looked white. The poor little swallow grew colder and colder, but he did not leave the happy prince. However, he could no longer keep himself alive. He at last knew that he was going to die. The swallow asked the prince to let him kiss his hand. The prince told him that he was happy he was going to Egypt. So he told him to kiss him on the lips. But the swallow told him that he was not going to Egypt. He was going to the house of death. And he fell down dead. At that moment, there appeared a crack inside the statue. The heart of the happy prince broke into two. The dead swallow lay at its feet. The next morning, the mayor and the town councillors came that way. They looked at the statue. They declared that the happy prince was no longer beautiful, so he was no longer useful. Then they melted the statue in a furnace, but the broken heart did not melt, it was thrown away. God asked, very important line, dear children. This is the moral of the lesson. God asked one of his angels, देवदूत, अपने देवदूतों से ईश्वर ने पूछा, to bring him the two most precious things in the city. The angel brought him the leaden heart of the happy prince and the dead bird. God told that in the garden of paradise, the little bird would sing forever. The happy prince would praise him forever in his city of gold. Dear children, here you see how the act of the happy prince and swallow was praised by the god. Yes, this lesson teaches us to help the needy people around you. Now the time has come to discuss the exercises of this lesson. Here are the exercises. Why do the courtiers call the prince the happy prince? Is he really happy? What does he see all around him? The happy prince was a beautiful statue. The courtiers called him happy because he had never seen sorrow and miseries. He is not really happy. He sees sorrow and miseries of people all around him. Now, question number 2 is there for you. Why does the happy prince send a ruby for the seamstress? What does the swallow do in the seamstress house? The happy prince sends a ruby for the seamstress because her little son is ill and she has no money. The swallow places the ruby on the table and fans the boy's forehead with his wings. Question 3. For whom does the prince send the sapphires and why? The prince sends a sapphire for the playwright who had fainted due to hunger. He sends the other sapphire for the match girl who had lost her matches in the gutter. Question 4. What does the swallow see when it flies over the city? The swallow sees the rich making merry in their beautiful houses and the beggars sitting at the gates, and the white faces of hungry children when it flies over the city. Question 5. Why did the swallow not leave the prince and go to Egypt? The swallow did not leave the prince and go to Egypt because he had understood the meaning of help to needy people. He loved the prince also. And last question, what are the precious things mentioned in the story? Why are they precious? The precious things mentioned in the story are dead swallow and heart of the prince. They are precious because they had helped needy people. So, dear children, I hope you will write all the answers of the exercises, questions in your notebook. Thank you.